Hey everyone, this should be fairly quick and be, at least maybe the most useful thing that we would have gone over today if we had had sections. So I'll try to keep this brief. So here we go. Let's talk about homework 2. You should have homework 1 back by now, either in your email or check for comments on the ELMS website. So for homework 2, which is due next Friday, you have to restate your directional hypothesis. For many of you, this can be the exact same hypothesis that you had before, but for those of you who might need to rework stuff, just go ahead and do that. You need to identify the questions that you will use to measure your hypothesis, and so these are questions that are coming from the final survey that is live now. And then you need your theory and explanation that goes into why you expect to see the relationship between your x and your y variable. This is not that there is a relationship between these two, but why you expect there to be one. And then you have your references, so now you have 2 academic sources. For many of you, if you did not have an academic source that's coming from a peer-reviewed journal or book, I've just sort of circled your homework and said not academic. So make sure that you go and you have 2 academic sources for the next assignment. And then make sure you cite stuff correctly. We'll go into that at the very end. And then presentation is just, make sure looks like you spent some time on it. Use a nice font, all that good stuff. Okay, so let's talk about your hypotheses. So of course, your hypothesis should be directional. You should deal with your independent variable and your dependent variable. So primarily, x affects y. I'll go through 2 main examples so that this will all hopefully be fairly clear by the end of it. So the first one is, the more formal education an individual has, the more likely he or she is to identify with the Democratic Party. Okay, so in this case, our independent variable, the variable that we expect to change, is formal education. So what we're doing is splitting respondents into different levels of education, because we can't force someone to be a college graduate and then force that same person to, at the same moment, be a non-college graduate. We can't do that, so we have to compare different groups of people across the population. So we are quote-unquote changing formal education, but what we're doing is just measuring different people with different levels of education and seeing how they differ. So this formal education is our independent variable. Then our dependent variable is identification with the Democratic Party. So this is what we expect to change in the population. It's what we want to explain. So in this case, we want to know, why do people identify with the Democratic Party? Okay, one theory says that maybe it's formal education. More years of formal education means that you are more likely to identify as a Democrat. So that is our first example. The second example is younger individuals or college students will have stronger preferences in regards to social policies as opposed to foreign or tax policies. So in this case, younger individuals or college students will be our independent variable. We are going to change. We're going to look at young people and we're going to look at old people, and then compare how they respond to social policy questions and foreign and tax policy questions. So here is the nice color coding that we had before. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to identify some questions in our survey that we can use to measure our hypothesis. So if we think about our independent variable for this example, which is formal education, we have questions that, or at least in this case, a question that we can use to measure that. And that is, what is the last grade of school or college you had opportunity to complete? So this is the question that we would use to measure the level of formal education someone has. That's pretty straightforward. So now we want to know how to measure identification with the Democratic Party. Well, we can also do that fairly easily. Do you consider yourself a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent? And then we can see how people respond. And there we go. I mean, this is so for a lot of you who have sort of straightforward hypotheses that you can measure in a single question. You'll just have two questions. In this case, we have last grade of school or college completed, and we have party identification. And that's all you need. These are the only two questions you need to test this hypothesis. So that's exciting, right? That's, so don't think that you have to go and collect 15 questions off the survey. Like, no, that's crazy. In a lot of cases, you just need two. But let's look at this other one, which is a little more complicated. So, younger individuals will have stronger preferences in regards to social policies as opposed to foreign and tax policies. So, we can measure young individuals by using how old are you, right? But then so then this is something that you need to think about. All right, so how are we going to define young? Younger than 29, 25, 22, 35? That's going to depend on your theory. So if you want to test something that's maybe a generational hypothesis, some of you have theories about millennials, which I believe is people that are currently like 32, 33. So like maybe you want to make the cutoff there. And so everyone that is younger than 33, I'm going to consider a millennial, and everyone above that, they're old people. That's what we're going to compare to. Maybe you're considered with just college-aged people, so maybe younger than 23, or maybe your hypothesis captures, or maybe your theory might capture people that are sort of near college, like 27 or maybe 28 or 20 or 26. You sort of, that's up to you. You have to make your argument for why you think this is a good place to stop the age cutoff. But it's still fairly straightforward. It's not that difficult, and we can capture it in a single question. But to get this second one, which is strength of preference in regards to different types of policies, we're going to have to combine questions. So this first part talks about social policy. So we can look at things that we identify as social policy questions on the survey. So in this case, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being the least supportive, 10 being the most supportive, to what extent do you support the Supreme Court's ruling on gay marriage? Okay, so this is a 0 to 10 scale, so we can code strong answers as being 0 to 2, and strong answers also as being 8 to 10. So being on the extremes of the scale, I think we can consider strong answers, and then everything else is sort of just a normal intensity answer. Like, even a 7, like, okay, yeah, you agree with it, but like, sort of, but not like all the way for whatever reason. Like, so, okay. To what degree is racial profiling by police a problem in the United States? In this case, there's 5 different choices, and I think our strong answers would be something like very serious problem and not a problem, right? Okay. And now we want to look at different types of policies that aren't necessarily social policies. We have the Iran deal, which is sort of similar to the previous question, which is where strong answers will be much less safe and much safer. And do you support U.S. military involvement in Syria? We have yes and no, and for strong answers, because we only have 3 answers to choose from here, and then no opinion. So what we're going to do then is look and see, okay, have young people answered, there's a typo right there, okay, good. Have young people as a whole answered more strongly to social policy questions? Doesn't mean that they didn't respond strongly to maybe perhaps the Iran deal or U.S. military involvement, but that in comparison to older people, they have stronger views on social policy, whereas maybe older people have stronger views on foreign policy or tax policy. So for a hypothesis like this, you sort of have to think, how can I combine questions to really get at what I want? So I want you guys to think about this really conceptually for the time being. Write it up, something like this, which questions do I think are useful? How am I going to think about what my strong answers are, or for whatever your hypothesis is trying to capture? Just give me something that shows that you've tried to solve this a little bit, and then later down the line, what we'll do is we'll get together and I'll help you figure out how to do the state of code that will let you get at what you want to test. So, because really, what the most important thing here is, getting you guys to think about this conceptually, not like, can you do it in Stata? Like that's not exactly what we are all that concerned with, right? But that you can think sort of complexly about how we can combine these different questions. Okay. So theory and explanation, again, I want to hit this because I think a lot of you might have to fix this. It should explain why this relationship exists. Why does X influence Y? It shouldn't be that I see that X is correlated with Y. Okay, that's fine. It might be, and hopefully it is for you, because that's why you want to study it. But the important part is, why do you expect to see this relationship? And importantly, you should ground these Y claims in your academic sources. Hopefully, a lot, it's about 50-50. Some people have to do this, some people don't. But just let me know if you have any questions or anything about your theory or an explanation. If you want to run something by me, like, is this actually getting at Y, or is this more sort of descriptive? Just let me know. Okay. So for citation, you need to have academic sources. Again, those of you that still need academic sources, I've circled it on your homework, and it should be fairly clear that you need more academic sources. This is the citation format for APSA. Some of you had academic sources, but they weren't, cited correctly. So make sure at the end of your paper you have something looking like this. So the top one is this American Voter. It's a book. It's a very famous book in political science. So this is what your book references can look like, and then below is a journal article. So these are citations that actually go with the very first hypothesis about education and party identification. So cool. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Hopefully, I kept this short enough that you can sit down and just watch it and not spend too much time on it. But thank you guys for being flexible, and let me know if you have any questions. All right, take care.